Anyway, the project is kind of based on the premise that certain relationships and certain kind of a status quo has been, in some way formalized and almost solidified in the city, especially in Bombay. That it creates a situation where you're either thinking extremely kind of idealistically or you're thinking extremely really. You're completely at two ends of the thing, and all these in-between paths which might be available in other cities are actually, they're not there. Unless you look at it completely like, the eastern waterfront opens up and you have like tracts of land and all, which I don't see...
Short of a natural calamity.
But that's happening, no? It is happening.
It is happening. It's a project on, and the rest of the city is like choking with all the real kind of, like you just have to solve those things and kind of push and pull and all those things, right? So, and in that situation, we was thinking that maybe like the discipline of architecture might be a little, maybe it's a little restricting. And maybe we can open it up, the conversation. Everyone can kind of contribute. You share whatever data you can get on a city, and you open up the phenomenon of this whole kind of disappearance of the architect from the housing, from involvement in like real housing, and you understand it as part of a bunch of phenomena which you might think are related, might not be related.
I think that's really interesting when you start thinking of images, because images are driving the market. In the sense of what is consumable is being decided by that, and nobody wants to look at it. Actually, I don't see any serious discussion on what is the trend, not even what is the trend, what's driving this, how does this convert into numbers, and of course it's not in the scope of 3 days, it can't be. But I think that the fact that you open up the discussion, it's worth looking at housing schemes that then tie up directly with imageries of various types. Like, just collect off the net, and that's one more data collection you have to look at.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, for example, you've got like that movie script. It occurred to me that then you start looking at architecture as columns which strike off from, say, a particular movie. So you get this whole trend with, I'm talking from Ahmedabad, you get the Dilip Soni trend right after Bagban. It's astoundingly kind of, all those kind of things that you could look at.
There's one aspect of density that has to do with imageability or identity creation. Because like you said, that sort of drives the real estate aspirations, it drives that aspirational aspect of the real estate market. There's a lot of government to citizen communication that gets imaged and perceived. So what is welfare, what is taxable, my right because I pay taxes, not his right because he doesn't pay taxes.
Okay, what about the dominant? I think the dominant has there is a huge politics within this idea of imageability,
Of course.
Of course.
And it lies with very few.
One assumes that if one, as architects or urbanists or urban designers or whatever, when you think about sensitively about density, then you are at a basic level only dealing with managing numbers and things. But by almost to a T, everyone, like even when you're like a lot of our conversations about opening up public and managing density so you don't have high squalor slum as high density models and low density extremely HIG models as a counterweight to that. What you were talking about say I want to re-densify the CBD and get more action, and the keys that you're using, your indicators are at that level of things like identity and subjective kind of, they're not objective number crunching kind of keys that you're looking at, the horizontals that you have in your matrix.
Yeah.
Those indicators like sound and things like that. They are kind of aesthetic kind of triggers of thought on density.
Quality.
And I find that in Delhi, this is the thing that the image of Delhi as being a certain kind of aggressive, certain kind of mind-bogglingly large kind of thing makes that question of identity even more precious. That question of what does my precinct mean, what does it stand for, where am I coming from, without owning. See, the other thing is that I think maybe that's the next thing to talk about, but without owning, can I belong? what can that city do to me to let me feel like I belong without actually owning a house by being on rent?
The aesthetic is an important factor in this, because if I'm thinking about building's imageability, it does mean that I've simply objectified it, which means already I've got the aesthetics of the typology in my head loaded in the image. I need a distance between me. It's not a fabric. It's a distance at which I can
view it.
I
need a distance to view it.
Right? And so there is, I mean, there are very few images of the desire for housing being conveyed through the kind
Fabric.
of actual fabric that you inhabit. It is either your personal space completely, or it is you in the garden. There is no urbanity to this. And I think that if you take up that theme, okay, in terms of the fact that these are metaphors of density.
Exactly. Each of these has an associated number.
Yes.
At another level, I think images also convey, or falsely convey, a kind of quality of life. As much as anthropologically, if you look at how we have evolved, and our communities have evolved and neighborhoods have evolved, actually, and you just juxtapose that with how we have evolved with technology. I think we have kind of distanced ourselves. Like in an office environment, you can still live in a glass box. I don't, you don't necessarily need to relate to. But if you look at probably like many cities, we are extremely multi-use in our nature of land. So by default, this suits us even now. There's only very small group of people who go to these high towers, with their ties and transact. So there, the global position of these towers become a lot more relevant than
the local geography.
I also believe that the relationship of the city and the media, bias or whatever, the alienation of the poor, which we've seen over the last 20 years. Okay, there's a huge kind of relationship there. Okay, I really believe that like a formation, say, of a city, or if you look at the socialist structure, it had a direct link with the kind of media which was there. And then there was this, profiteering, and there was capitalism coming in, etc., maximizing profit, which became okay. Which is fundamentally in this situation, what are you going to do? Maximize profit. That's the basic thing. So what I'm kind of is, what if, and if you are at all giving to the poor, it's like a up down kind of dole, so that if we can somehow subtly, spatially in these cities create that change, I believe it will have larger impacts. Okay, and those need to come in, because what we have, and also we are at a point of time where flyovers are like dams right now, in terms of like, bad words, literally. So we have to get out of this. Okay, now the metro thing is coming. I'm a little scared about the way the metro is perceived here. Okay, and I really believe that these kind of solutions need to be far more local. Like even technology based, the technologies need to come in for our infrastructure, for our social fabrics, for ours. We cannot keep on create situations and superimposing like these imports from places and expect like very different changes. So that's, I think, like you sort of about government. When you're discussing government, they have this. They go to Shanghai. Stop going to Shanghai. In that sense, you need to start. I think the cities need to start being generators of its own kind of fabric. I
kind of second that, in the sense that one of the things is that I think we've been incredibly demanding of our government, in the sense that if you actually look at the logistics of running the kind of systems we are asking them to run, or asked them to run previously, now some of them are being tried. I think it's ludicrous, because no single agency can do that.
I think, like you said, how much can we load onto the government? Because what is happening is government, let's not say government, but let's call it this development agency. Okay, because that takes on different roles, different avatars in different state context or city context, right? This development agency, which is who are basically responsible for spending your tax money. Okay, they are create a framework of a master plan and bylaws and stuff as development controls, where they're specifying volumes, built volumes in different locations on a structure that's based on land use segregation and so on and so forth. That thing takes them, at least in Delhi's case, takes them 20 years to do on a 20-year cycle. And one big inadequacy that I even pointed out when I was speaking the first time was that the city is changing every 5 years, what you're doing in 20 years, right? But there is a logistical problem there, okay? I think that one is about capacity, we don't have enough planners, right? Or we don't have enough data collection. Data collection is inefficient. By the time you finish your surveys to feed the master planning process, that data is already out of date. What the city does is to manage densities. To manage densities even not just permanently, but manage densities during the course of the day, for example. So if someone is not moving away from their house to work, but someone who's in a tie or whatever will commute because he wants distance between work and recreation and play. So we actually have bundles available that are controllable. You control the bundles that are available in every area of the city. So you'll have a different bundle if it is a part of a heritage structure. You'll have a different bundle where the city meets the village. You'll have a different bundle where you're talking about flipping densities, right? You're saying what if the center was hollow, and after some time that kind of fractally kind of flips out each side, right? Housing for all by 2020. When I'm writing that vision, you don't have the breathing room to reflect on that vision during the course of rolling out this housing. It's a firefighting exercise, which has now, and I mean I'm sure it's resulted in the same, is like you start questioning, are we living in the right lifestyle typologies? This family unit, this what we got, no? 2 plus 2 plus 2. Is it 2 plus 2 plus 2 filial connections? Is it 2 plus 2 plus 2 friendships? Is it like, are you sharing an apartment? Are you not even in an apartment? Are you in a chawl where you're not someone's friend, but you share the same kitchen or share the same bathroom? Those are typologies that help us fill more density into this thing. I feel astounded that most master plans have a dwelling units per hectare, and your dwelling units can be 50 to 300. Okay, it still counts as one dwelling unit. Yeah. And there are 5 people who will occupy 300 square meters somewhere in the city, and 5 people who will occupy 10 square meters also, through flexible use. And we ignore that. We delegitimize some ways of living, which are not so abhorrent. They are not so terrible.
No, not at all. In fact, the problem is because you don't accept them simply, is that there's no thought given to them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you actually look, I was telling my group that I was living in an apartment in Paris which was less than, well, it was 100, maybe 17 square meters, which had kitchen, toilet, everything. Damn good place to live there. That's the only thing you could afford, 17 square meters.
No, I'll do a comparison between my lifestyle and my building has a guard who does a night shift. Both of us shower outside our homes. I get to work in shower. He gets to work in showers. He just does it in the parking lot, I do it inside one plush bathroom. But the bathroom in my house is not being used. The water, that 150 liters per gallon per day, that is government norms of water consumption per person, is also a dispersed density of water. It's not like, I'm using that ghar wala pani, I'm using the office wala pani. No. I guarantee, maybe it's not, majority people don't behave in the way my guard and I do, but this is a way in which one can manage systems better, where you're not over capacity on something and under capacity on something else.
What we've been looking at is, for example, we looked up the time savers. We were saying what is the residential human space index that you require, and it's something like 15 square meters per person. So you take that into height, okay, it's about 45 cubic meters per person that you would use in a space. And then we've just done a simple thing that you take normal housing, builder housing of all 3 income groups, and you figure out what is the total number of people who actually use it, and what would happen if you were to follow the world space index saying that all our cities are world class. Let's look at that rhetoric. Our cities would double in size with their present density.
Yeah.
Okay, so which means that this sharing business is so critical to the life of our cities that we can't afford to delegitimize it. I mean, we are doing it, and that's only a manner of, I think yesterday you brought it up, or maybe Gaurav brought it up, it's only a matter of controlling that. Middle income group is absolutely on par with international space. It's working perfect. So when if you say like I've got
two bedroom apartment,
which is we are looking at roughly between 30 38 and 56 would be the middle income group. That falls perfect if you're looking at a family of normally 5, but let's say average 6. Okay, which maybe in most middle income groups will be familiar. Okay, it's at the lower group where you get all the fun happening, because what you're saying is that you're living actually at twice or sometimes thrice the density. Okay, so in fact we just called few of the guys from my office and people we know, like the guard, and I just called them yesterday, asked them what is the unit. We calculated their areas and we found that it was double, and then we just took a normal block and said how many people would live in this, and it matched up perfectly. It's like we are
this 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom definition of housing,
it's terrible.
that is actually driven by real estate. A real estate valuation of property.
No, it's also simpler forms.
Yeah, it's simple. My point is that, see, the language, this is what that code language has to be more accessible. If your language is simple, half your job is done. Because, and in that sense, what you're saying that you want to do the output of this workshop should make as much sense as it does to a architect or a planner, as it does to a filmmaker or to like an author or something like that. I think the lack of questioning of the density models that are happening post liberalization, or the real estate or the kind of the models with which we consume land now are not being discussed. Everyone's discussing the fallouts. We are not getting into the thick of the argument together.
The problem is that you're looking at this as function. So the exercise that we are doing for Ahmedabad is saying, don't look at it as function, look at it as activity.
Sleep.
Look at it as sleep, bathe, this, that, and look at what are the kind of things you gather when you do these activities. And only from there you will get a redefinition of the house. The minute you start looking at it as a functional diagram, then it becomes part of the machine that keeps the real estate going. You have to somehow subvert that machine. So, and what we are finding,
or I wouldn't say subvert necessarily across the board. Leverage it. Use it where it makes sense.
Yeah, subvert is
but don't assume that there is only that one way of applying through the city.
No, but this way has been put in by the real estate guys.
yes.
You know, so that they can build for 1,500 people, 10,000 people at one shot.
No, but like we discussed,
You know, and they have chosen 2 bedroom or 3.
No,
It's their choice.
no,
You
but
know, like,
Gaurav, this is the thing. The dichotomy here is you've chosen this because you can generate real estate really, really quickly. But if you talk to any real estate developer, he prefers to sell his development project to fewer people. It's less headache for him.
It's like this NGO, right? You know, NGOs, and now a lot of NGOs take a position that they want to work with the system. You know, which is exactly what I think, you know, I mean, at that level, when you start looking at the developer, you know, so you have a state which you assume it to be welfare towards society, which it is not, but that's the position that it takes. And you have a developer who is profit-making.
Profiteering.
Yeah. So essentially, you kind of have these two distinctions, and I think that, you know, hardened positions need to kind of soften and allow for the developer to become an agent through which, you know, so it's like government's agent which provides you the housing.
Politically, the mechanics of that are now acceptable.
Yes.
You see, earlier, a politician would be very particular not to be seen to be hobnobbing with a real estate developer. Now it's not a problem at all.
So where is the problem? You know, what are the systems in place which need to make sure this delivery can happen?
Yeah.
Is it the imageability, or is it the lack of imagination, or is it lack of experimentation? You know, who starts these balls rolling? And where does it start? You know, and whose onus is it? Is it the architects? Because at some level, you know, we are at the last rung of this entire change.
There are basically 3 stages in any culture or any, from where you can judge. One is when you want quantity. Once you have enough quantity, you want quality. And once you have enough quality is when you actually appreciate design. So the LIG falls into the design, which is the image, the kind of status quo, the value attached to that. HIG, sorry. And then you have the quality. So you have enough quantity, but then you are looking for the quality of the builder, whether he uses good materials, he uses good finishes, the windows are they sealed. And the low income actually only looks at quantity. They don't care what the finish of the house is, they don't care what the windows, aluminum or MS or whatever. It's just the quantity. So these are the aspirations basically.
You know, in this speculative market, Actually, the HIG, he's also a seller. And that's the difference.
investment.
The moment he becomes a user, you might not necessarily have all that craziness that's happening. In the HIG today. Because it's the buyer is actually a seller as well.
He's just sinking money.
He's just
If you see the issue of housing, there are two, from whatever work I've seen, there are two key agendas. One is the agenda of the ingredients not being there, and the second is the lack of the right recipe. So a question to me is that how can a system ensure that there are right ingredients, and then a system to ensure that there are multiple recipes to fit a certain palate. That
I think there's also key in not prescribing multiple recipes. I think multiple recipes will keep evolving, changing, developing. So I think part of that is also that system to manage, put things in place, has to be descriptive enough, not prescriptive, but descriptive enough to allow those multiple recipes to occur. This thing of exotifying, but Pushkar has done it for centuries, or Kumbh Mela has done it for centuries. It has done it for centuries. The thing is that there was a communal management of spaces that had other codes, like caste codes or communal codes or whatever, that managed that system. We belong to a rational, modern, educated kind of community of professionals that is grappling with issues at a macro level. The structure was codified and ingrained through various social structures there. We are trying to replace that. So that puts we need to be a lot more nimble than what we are doing right now.
There's this incredible formation across Ahmedabad. I'll show you guys. Because the AMC limit is here, there's 300 meters and the Auda limit starts here. So there's a green belt naturally formed because it belongs
like a no man's land.
It's a no man's land. But it's a green belt it's about 4 kilometers long now. Point is that at this time, when the transformation took place, there were a lot of people who couldn't afford to pay the agriculture to NA fee. So you had these parcels of green land lying on the edge where the ring roads get built. Now how do you activate that? So some Rabbari community guys listen, Shadi. So they started letting out this land for Shadi. And it became a typology. There are
Banquet hall.
Without the hall.
These farmhouses are only outdoors kind of shadi.
Yeah, but this is just like one place for cooking and a beautiful lawn. Within 3 years, Aniket Bhagwat's 3-4 largest projects that he put in my man was Rabbari clients who wanted this. That's how it was. And it's just this thing. How long can I make this pay before I have to pay that NA fee? This is the agricultural way of thinking. It's
Let's farm the land.
Let's farm the land.
Yeah.
In terms of design, there is also I think the issue that housing is not mostly the focus of discussion in an academic environment is because in most cases in the schools we find that the academic environment is not interested in the ordinary.
I think ownership is a major issue, and there you got to freaking draw the line between desire and aspiration.
Also ownership, because I think after economic liberalization a lot has to do also with security.
Yeah.
Because if I don't own, I might be driven out tomorrow.
I think it has a lot to do with the rich becoming like middle class to becoming like super rich overnight, in that sense, I think.
Our quest is to see if we can create a public space that is so sticky, like internet sticky, how people are attracted to content on the net. You make it so sticky that its social capital or its value to its stickiness can counteract the real estate value. So you don't necessarily have to build a high height, because the pyramid depth, the TOD implies that metro stations are going to have high volumes on top of them. That's what it implies. And that's how it is rolled out in the West. So we are saying, suppose you make that a bowl-shaped thing, and that the open ground around the metro as a precinct has such high kind of social stickiness, socio-cultural stickiness, that it can outweigh the financial benefit of a thing. So because that social thing will benefit economic activities in the vicinity. So now the critical is how big is that Maidan, at what size does that Maidan, in terms of cost of land acquisition, development and all those things, compare to the cost of construction land value of a small footprint high tower. Where do they equate? That defines your Maidan size. Then we are looking at mobility and saying lay out your street network to emphasize non-motorized mobility around a metro station so that you encourage to use the metro. So you do this thing, you do that, and now the eventual ambition, I don't know if you managed to do it or not, is to extract. So luckily there are now 3 schemes that are doing this within the group. 3 separate road networks, 3 separate kind of things, but interpretations of the same. We put them together, layer them and try and extract a descriptive code, not a prescriptive code, but a descriptive code that allows all these 3 avatars to happen, but anchors down a couple of like sewage treatment through decentralized networks, road networks that like prioritize non-vehicle mobility. You have these anchors that hinge the framework, but you derive descriptive. So
what we're doing is we've kind of commonly together as a group, individually identified the qualities that you would want in a city. Qualities could be even things like how you feel alone in a city when you are around strangers, or things like you feel much safer in a city around strangers. You feel safer in the city because even though you don't know anybody, but you are still being watched upon. But it's safer. It's not invading your privacy. You are still alone, but you are safe. Or and so there are many aspects of kind of vibrancy and open spaces. Then different people belonging to different things or spheres in life, kind of cohabiting places or sharing places. So we've kind of listed down a few of these qualities which each of us like in a city, and then try to identify the reasons why these qualities are there in a city and how it can be generated.
One of the reasons why we took the DCR in, at least at some level, a lot of it is stifled by the DCR.
yeah, it's mandating something.
Yeah, it's almost suggesting that this is the only thing that you do.
It's mandating a form which is not the only form, which is why it falls out of relevance, because someone thinks of a different form, flirts with the legality and thinks of a different form. Yeah.
And it's easy for those guys to interpret too.
Yes.
That's another.
Yeah.